How did Jews in America get so wealthy? Jewish immigrants have been the wealthiest religious community in American culture since the great influx of a century ago or so. They comprise just 2% of the U.S. populace, yet 25% of the 400 richest Americans. How did it come about, and how important is their assistance to Israel? Let's continue, but first subscribe to our channel. Ronald Lauder, the president of the World Jewish Congress, recently caused controversy by urging Israel to begin peace talks with the Palestinians right away. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister Lauder's personal friend, was thought to be the target of the statement. A little while later, Lauder reaffirmed his unequivocal backing of Netanyahu and policies that seek to create a lasting peace in the Middle East. Because of his significant role and primarily his wealth, Lauder's comments made headlines and provoked both positive and negative reactions. According to Forbes magazine, he is worth $2.7 billion. In addition to being one of the world's largest art collectors, his family owns the massive Estee Lauder Cosmetics company. He also owns hundreds of television stations and media outlets both domestically and internationally, including 25% of Channel 10 TV in Israel. He generously contributes to several Jewish and Israeli institutions, leaders, and organizations, including Netanyahu. There are undoubtedly other American Jews influencing Israel and giving money to the country in addition to Lauder. When they were little, the rich uncle in America used to send packages to many Israeli adults. The U.S. donates billions of shekels to thousands of institutions, including hospitals and colleges. They account for over 2/3 of all donations made in Israel, according to a Hebrew University research. The Jewish Agency provides aid to each new immigrant. The majority of its funding comes from U.S. donations. Many of us reside on land that Arabs were purchased by the Jewish National Fund using funds from Jewish Americans. The Israeli government provides NIS $1,295 per month to a Haredi yeshiva student. Additional funds of NIS $3,885 come from Haredi American donations. According to the online Jewish encyclopedia, 5.6 million Jews, or 1.8% of the total population, reside in the United States, not counting the 500 Israelis. The majority of them live in wealthy cities, primarily in New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and Boston. According to a 2008 Pew Forum Institute study, 46 Jews earn more than $100,000 annually, compared to 19% of all Americans. This makes Jews the richest religion community in the U.S. This year, a different Gallup poll revealed that more American Jews than any other religious group, 70%, enjoy a high standard of living, which is higher than that of 60% of the population. Of the 400 billionaires listed on Forbes' list of the wealthiest individuals in America, over 100 are Jewish. As Forbes puts it, Jews own 6 of the top 20 venture capital funds in the United States. The founders of Google and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg and David Fisher, the latter the son of Bank of Israel Governor Stanley Fisher, are Jewish, as is Sergey Brin. Ben Shalom Bernanke, the Federal Reserve's chairman, is Jewish, as is Paul Warburg, the Fed's founder, and Alan Greenspan, his predecessor. Beyond their percentage of the population, Jews are well represented in Wall Street, Silicon Valley, U.S. Congress and administration, Hollywood, TV networks, and the American press. American Jews are among the wealthiest ethnic groups in the universe since they live in one of the richest nations in the world, the United States. The pace at which they amassed wealth makes their success story even more amazing. When the U.S. was founded on July 4, 1776, there were just a few thousand Jews living there, the majority of whom were Marrano and those who had fled or were banished from Spain in favor of colonies in North America. Approximately 200 Jews, primarily from Germany and Central Europe, emigrated to the U.S. in the middle of the 19th century. The majority of them were well-established Reformed Jews who identified more as Germans and Americans than as Jews. They dispersed throughout the continent, establishing companies ranging from tiny shops and manufacturing plants to major financial institutions like Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers. In 1882, the huge immigrant wave started. Poised half of all Jews lived in Tsarist Russia, which was in the throes of a failing industrial revolution and was poised to collapse. Meanwhile, Jews residing in smaller towns suffered from brutal pogroms and fell into poverty. About 2 million Jews left Ukraine, Western Russia, Poland, Lithuania, Belarus, and Romania to come to the United States in a span of 42 years. The U.S. rose to become the largest Jewish concentration in the world. In 1924, a wave of immigration to Israel started in large numbers, but was later stopped by strict rules passed in the U.S. The majority of the immigrants who came to the U.S. on packed boats were as impoverished as church mice. According to research by that era's leading scholar, Dr. Robert Rockaway, 80% of American Jews worked manually prior to World War I, the majority of them in textile industries. Industrialist Henry Ford sponsored an anti-Semitic campaign that resulted in the blocking of Jewish workers from many businesses. In Brooklyn and the Lower East Side of New York, the majority of them resided in densely populated, filthy slums. Numerous movies and literary works depict the vibrant yet harsh and violent world that exists in those neighborhoods. Growing up in the dirty alleys was a vibrant culture of cabarets and small Yiddish theaters, accompanied by a Jewish mafia that included well-known crime figures like Meyer Lansky, Abner Longies Willman, and Louis Lepke Buchholter. Many of the socialist Jews in Europe got involved in trade unions, worker strikes, and protests. A large number of labor unions were founded by Jews. But more quickly than any other immigrant group, the Jewish immigrants rose out of poverty. According to Rockaway in the 1930s, twice as many Jewish males as there were in the general American population worked in free professions, 20%. After World War II, anti-Semitism declined and liberal activists, many of whom were Jewish, struggled to get the 1964 Civil Rights Act to repeal and lessen hiring restrictions against Jews. 75% of American Jews worked in white-collar employment in 1957. Compared to 35% of all white Americans, in 1970, 87% of Jewish males held clerical positions versus 42% of white Americans, and Jewish men earned 72% more than the average. The Democratic Party and welfare policies are the only things that keep the majority of people impoverished. As Jews gained wealth, they assimilated into the community. They left the ghetto and relocated into the suburbs, giving up Yiddish and assimilating into the non-Jewish upper classes' fashion, vocabulary, and dating customs. After leaving religion behind to immigrate to the U.S., the majority of Jews later returned to religion and joined Reform and conservative communities, becoming more like the majority of Americans who practice religion. Millions of immigrants from China, Italy, Ireland, and dozens of other nations immigrated in the U.S. with Jews. Since then, they have also settled down, although the Jews have been more successful than everyone else. How come? Every expert we spoke with said that Jewish education was the cause. According to research by the Jewish American student organization Hillel, 9 to 33% of students at prestigious U.S. institutions identify as Jewish. According to Danny Halperin, the former Israeli economic attaché in Washington, the Jewish tradition always sanctified studying, and the Jews made an effort to study from the moment they arrived in America. Furthermore, Jews have a long history of becoming successful company owners. For instance, the Irish studied less and initiated less since they were descended from families of land workers with a different mindset. The Jews progressed because many areas were blocked to them, states Halperin. Few Jews were absorbed into the police force compared to the large number of Irish people. The Jews ventured into new professions that required self-starters. They founded investment banking because they refused to fit into conventional banking. The film industry was essentially taken over by Jews once it was founded from scratch in the 1930s. Several Jewish names can still be found in Hollywood's upper echelons and on television networks. Subsequently, they revolutionized high-tech and introduced a new, learning-intensive sector. According to Rebecca Caspi, Executive Vice President of the Jewish Federations of North America, JFNA, the Jews were the first people to undergo globalization. They had a robust and encouraging community as well as a global network of links that predated other countries. All other ethnic groups looked forward to the Jewish community organization as a model. While it wasn't supportive of the individual, it did aid Jews everywhere, particularly in the U.S., which was always more open than other nations and offered equal possibilities. Is that the reason they had greater success in the U.S. than elsewhere? In the majority of countries, discrimination decreased. I believe that Jews have prospered in America specifically because capitalism benefits them. Jews are more likely to be entrepreneurs. They also tend to study more, are perceptive, know how to grab chances, and are adept at networking. Jews benefit from a competitive environment. This finishes our today's video. Comment down below your views on it. Subscribe now for more.